Hi, it's Lauren. Thanks for joining me and welcome back to my craft room. I just got this big old box from scrapbook.com, and if it is what I think it is, I wanted to record my unboxing for my initial reactions for the new Distress color from Ranger and Tim Holtz. I'm getting this a little before the release, so by the time this goes up on YouTube, it will obviously already be out, but let's open it and see. Oh my god. I was literally thinking about my mom had said I was like another gray for Distress colors, and look at this beautiful Lost Shadow color. Let me get it out. So it's a very like soft cloudy gray, or a shadow gray. I'm trying not to get the glare of my window in here, but it is a really pretty soft color. So I have the ink and the Oxide Distress paint. I have the sprays, the spray stain and the Oxide spray, as well as the glaze. How pretty is this going to be? Oh my goodness. So let me go ahead and swatch these out so I can show you the colors. I'll also swatch them out and compare them to the other grays that are in the line, so we can get a comparison. Yay! So I've started my swatches, and I have the Distress paint and the Distress embossing glaze first on a little note card here. I am using some white cardstock. Here you can see the embossing glaze on the bottom and the Distress paint on top, and what a very beautiful soft gray color these are. And the paint is still drying, and so I'm getting paint all over my fingers. Next, I have the Distress spray stain and the Distress Oxide spray. You can see the differences in the types of ink within the spray bottles. And here I have them sprayed. My Oxide spray is on the left, and my Distress stain, the spray stain, is on the right. You can see the difference in the types of inks, and they're actually pretty close in color. The Oxide is a little more of a warm tone, and I think that's just because of the formulation. Here is a Distress ink pad. Again, Lost Shadow, such a beautiful soft gray, and it is a darker ink because it is a Distress ink. And here you can see what it looks like on a clean foam blender. And here I've swatched it out. So on the top, I have Pumice Stone, which you can see is a warmer gray. On the bottom, I have Hickory Smoke, which is a cooler gray. And then in the center, the large panel is our Lost Shadow. And it's definitely a nice in-between color. I would say it's more of an ice gray. It's not terribly warm, and it's not that darker gray, but it is a nice cool gray. So now our Distress Oxide, you can see here it's such a pigmented pad, so it's a little bit on the lighter side, and here's what it looks like on a clean dome foam blender. These are from scrapbook.com, and as you can see by the stains, they are well loved and used. And here is the Distress Oxide. So again, on top we have Pumice Stone, on the bottom is Hickory Smoke, and then in the center is that Lost Shadow color. So it's again not warm, not cool, but more of an icy tone compared to like all three together. So here is the Distress ink on the left and the Distress Oxide on the right. I can definitely see myself using these colors for cloudy skies, so that's the card sample I'm going to make today. I have a lot of scrapbook.com exclusive products here. I'm going to start with picking this beautiful darker gray color from the Playful 6x8 smooth cardstock paper pad, and I'm going to die cut the largest A2 out of this piece of paper. Now, of course, if you have the A2 size paper pad, you could just tear a sheet off of there, but I have my 6x8 handy, so I'm going to use that to die cut my background. And then I was originally going to use a gray banner from this rainbow set or die set, but I'm going to change my mind later on, so I'm just going to kind of skip over that real quick. I'm grabbing the next size down in my white cardstock and I'm sorry, the next size down of my A2 rectangle, and I'm going to die cut that out of some white cardstock as well as the complete rainbow with the banner. So here are what my two layers are going to look like. So let's do some stenciling on that white cardstock. I'm grabbing my little cloud stencil. It's a 6x8 stencil. And I'm also going to grab my grip mat so that way I can stencil without worrying about my paper moving while I'm adding my ink. I'm going to use a Distress Oxide for adding these clouds. Oxide is my favorite ink to use from the Distress line, so I'm going to use my favorite type of ink here, and I'm going to add that lost shadow and all of those little clouds on this stencil, just using my Dome Foam blender to add the ink and make sure I get all of those little nooks and crannies of my stencil. And here you can see how pretty that color looks on some white cardstock. Now I want to add some Cloud Whip, and I'm going to just shift my stencil. I'm not doing anything fancy with my stencil. I didn't even clean it. I'm just shifting it so I could fill in some more clouds and just have some fun layers. And I'm just going to use a spatula to take out some of my Cloud Whip and just put it right on my grip mat. And I'm going to use my Distress Spray Stain to add some of that Lost Shadow ink color to the Cloud Whip. And I'm going to keep mixing it together. When you're adding liquid to the Cloud Whip, it does get a little bit runny because you're adding liquid to it. So I just keep adding more Cloud Whip and more ink until I'm happy with the consistency and the color. It doesn't look like I did much to it because the Lost Shadow is such a faint and light gray color that it looks still pretty white, but you'll see here when I put it through my stencil, you'll see those nice gray Lost Shadow mixed with my Cloud Whip clouds. So I'm using my large scraper to get all of that in between my stencils, and here you can see my background. So I have the darker gray clouds with the Distress Oxide of Lost Shadow, and then a little bit lighter clouds but with texture because of the Cloud Whip. I'm going to use some more Distress Oxides for my stash. These are all kind of nice light colors to make a pastel rainbow. I wanted the colors to be soft and muted just like this Lost Shadow color is. So I decided to go with Saltwater Taffy, Squeeze Lemonade, Twisted Citron, and Tumbled Glass as my colors for this rainbow. I have a piece of copy paper that I'm just using to help me with hiding the different arches of my rainbow because I only want to color one at a time. So I'm using some mint tape and copy paper just to help keep me from getting colors in places I don't want them to be. So I'm going to start with that Saltwater Taffy on the top arch of my rainbow. I'm going to go in with a light hand and just add color till it completely covers the arch, and then I will move on to Squeezed Lemonade as my second color in the arch, Twisted Citron for the third, and finally Tumbled Glass for that fourth small little arch in the center of my rainbow. Once all four colors are done, you can see how pretty this little soft pastel rainbow has turned out. Since I did use Distress Oxides, I thought I would use my sprayer here. I'm lifting it really high up because I just want a soft spray of water on my rainbow. I'm not using a watercolor cardstock or a thick cardstock. This is actually a very smooth cardstock. This is a Heffy Doodle alcohol marker cardstock, so it's not very thick. It can't take a lot of water and texture or anything to that. So I just want to make sure that my little sprays droplets were not heavy. And then I just used a paper towel to pick up the excess water. So I die cut another banner out of that white cardstock. I got some ink on my banner, on my rainbow, in places that I wasn't sure would be covered by the embossing glaze. So I decided to just cut out another one. And I'm just wiping across some embossing ink onto this banner. And then I'm going to take my Lost Shadow embossing glaze and completely cover it with this beautiful gray color. And then I'll take my heated tool and I will melt down the embossing powder. I actually end up doing this 2 times. So this has 2 coats of the Lost Shadow embossing glaze. Once the banner and the embossing glaze has cooled down and I can touch the banner again, I'm just going to add it on top of my rainbow die cut because it's the same size with some tape runner from scrapbook.com. So I'm just adding tape completely over that banner, making sure to get it all the way to the corners and then adhering on that embossed glazed banner. I love that it adds a little bit of shine and a little more texture to my card. My background is still drying, so I'm going to move on to the next thing, which is my sentiment. And because I created such a soft rainbow color, I'm going to use the dies Have and Hope to create just kind of an uplifting, maybe a get well soon or sympathy card for someone. But I wanted to have my sentiment in the same Lost Shadow gray. So this time I'm going to actually grab the Distress Paint and I'm adding a very thin layer to the same white cardstock, just using up my scraps, and I'm going to set that aside to dry. So here I am trying to debate on my sentiment, and like I said, I do end up going with Have Hope. So I'm just going to make sure that I've painted enough on this white cardstock, so that way I will have plenty of room to die cut these two words out when it's time. So after, you can see there, I will have plenty of room. So after it's done drying, I will also die cut my sentiment out of that cardstock. I have my top folding A2 card base. I'm just getting it ready, waiting for everything to dry so I can start gluing all of my items together. So I'm using that same tape runner to adhere that gray cardstock from the Playful paper pad to my card base. And then I'm checking again my cloudy background, and it seems to be getting drier. It's not completely and totally dry yet. So I wanted to add a little bit more of my Lost Shadow product. So I'm taking the Oxide spray and I'm just adding a little bit of spray just to add more of that Lost Shadow to my background. I'm grabbing a paper towel and just dabbing up a little bit of the really heavy droplets. And I can see here it will look really nice behind my rainbow. And it's about as dry as it's going to get for now. So I added some adhesive to the gray cardstock and I'm gluing down my cloudy background. And I just love it. I love the tone on tone look between my Distress Oxide stencil clouds and my mixed media with the Cloud Whip clouds. I just think it looked really pretty and it's creating a really nice cloudy sky. I grabbed a sheet of my holographic cardstock, the mirror paper from scrapbook.com, and I die cut Have Hope out of that mirror cardstock, as well as the dried distress paint in that Lost Shadow color. And I'm going to glue the Lost Shadow layer on the top of my mirror paper layer and then just slightly shifting it to the top left. So it creates a nice little shiny drop shadow. If you've been following me for a while, you know I love to do drop shadows when I have word die sentiments. Once those are dry, I'm adding a little bit more glue behind my sentiments and I'm going to glue them to the banner of my rainbow. So they fit perfectly together on that little banner of the rainbow. So I have my Have Hope and it's glued down and there's a little bit of shine that peeks out of my sentiment. So when the light hits it just right, you'll see that kind of glow behind the sentiment. I'm taking some foam adhesive because I want to pop up my rainbow and I'm adding it behind each of my rainbow arches as well as behind my banner. And I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to place it on the card. And once I feel happy about my placement, I'm going to peel off that last of my backing of my foam adhesive and adhere it down to the card. I grabbed a pearl pops of color. I'm just adding a few drops just for a little bit more shine on my card and I'm going to tap on the inside to dome them out. So again, I've used the Lost Shadow Distress Oxide for my clouds in my background. And then for the mixed media clouds, I used my Cloud Whip from scrapbook.com and mixed in some of my Distress Spray Stain. I also have the embossing glaze in Lost Shadow for my banner. Again, this is the embossing glaze container. And then finally, I used Lost Shadow one more time on my sentiment Have Hope by using the Distress paint and die cut it out. So here is a final look at my card featuring the brand new Distress Color, Lost Shadow. Thank you to scrapbook.com for the opportunity to play with this new color and to show you the swatches and some inspiration. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!